One of my viewers asked me how to write fiction. She just can't seem to get her head in the game. Mostly that's because she would rather write nonfiction, but she still needs a creative credit in order to get her degree. Now, fiction can be a whole lot of fun. It's all about finding that small spark of imagination. Now, that was small, but that's how it always begins. For me to write fiction, naturally, it's all about being imaginative. My imagination is constantly going, sometimes without me. And over the years, it's gotten me into quite a bit of trouble, especially when I was growing up going to school. There'd be plenty of times where I'd pick up an eraser or a pencil and turn it into a spaceship and have myself a gay old time, much to the chagrin of my teacher. So I don't know if you'd call that a benefit or a drawback, but it's led to some very interesting stuff over the years. Secondly, I think quite cinematically. I often think about books as though they would appear in movies or maybe even a Netflix series, or hell, why not shoot for Amazon while we're at it? I often include what actors would play those parts. That runs everything from the dialogue that they use to the background scenery of what I want people to see. I still think I would have made a hell of a director. I'm like, how would the special effects appear, and then trying to describe that to your reader? That can be kind of a pain in the ass, especially if you don't have a lot of experience with it, but you try to visualize it. Next, I have the alternate universe mentality. Think of writing fiction as an alternate universe. This means you don't want to be too rigid on the people, places, and things that are in your book. There is a bit of a literary license when you're writing fiction. You can get away with quite a bit, as long as you put in a disclaimer that it wasn't based on any real people. But most people who read fiction know it's fiction. In fact, the definition of fiction is literature in the form of prose that describes imaginary events and people. Something that is invented or untrue. Now, you still have to make it realistic, otherwise you'll lose your reader. But for the most part, you have free reign. Your universe can have a number of things. You can make a tidal wave wipe out New York. Something else I do that inspires me to write more fiction is that I like creating character bios. Now, creating character bios is kind of like setting up a character sheet for your characters. For those of you who play role-playing games, it's kind of the same thing. You're breaking down their behaviors, mannerisms, their attributes, the things that make them tick, their wants and needs. As I said before, what actors would I put into my book to play each part? For example, I have a picture of Kate Beckinsale that inspires me to write Elizabeth's part in my next book, Shadows of Atlantic City. That's the character from Van Helsing. I've always loved that look, and that's what I modeled my character after. It helps me get into the mindset of fictional writing. Next, it all comes down to outlining the chapters and books. Now, if you're ever in trouble getting the story going, try outlining it. I know there's a lot of people out there that can write from the seat of their pants, and that's fine. There is no right or wrong answer to how you write your book. But I find that if I outline everything from start to finish, then I know where my goals are and where I want the story to wind up. All I gotta do is connect point A to point B. Now, outlining can be anything from adding a single sentence of how you want the book to end to a little bit more meticulous parts like I do and include dialogue I would like to see in the book, or action scenes, or emotions that the characters present, just about everything. If it comes to mind, I put it in the outline. Now, the outlining doesn't necessarily mean that's what I want to do, but it does give me something to go off of. Bottom line is that outlining helps me see where I want the story to go. Another method that helps me write fiction is to read the works of others. One of the best things to do when writing in any genre is to appreciate the work of other writers. I'm all about Stephen King, but I do have a few fantasy books that I like to read, like James Lauder's Night of the Black Rose. That is still one of my favorite books. But I find that reading books of the same genre that I'm writing in helps inspire quite a bit of creativity. And lastly, understanding fiction as a whole. This means not being too clinical when you're writing your book. It's a story, not a historical reenactment or college paper. Sure, like I said, you'd want to do all the research you can to make sure your book is more realistic. You want to make it believable, after all. But to a certain point. Like, take fantasy, for example. How many people do you know have actually met an elf or an orc? So there is a bit more flexibility in fantasy, but you still need to research a few things to make it more realistic. Case in point, in Kingmaker, I spent 3 days researching the distance a horse can travel. That's because someone pointed out that the timelines didn't match up, so I spent 3 days making sure that it did. And I did have to rewrite it. He was right. I was off by like a day. But I was able to fix it, and I know a lot more about horses than I thought I'd ever know. But for the most part, when you're writing fiction, it's an invented world filled with imaginary people. Have fun with it. At the end of the day, it all comes down to what you want to write. Every author has their own process and flow when writing a book. You have to find that part of yourself and expand on what you want to create. Now, don't worry if you think it sucks. We all have those stories and books that we don't feel meet our expectations. But keep in mind that what winds up happening is that those things we think of that suck wind up being someone's favorite piece of content. Write the story you want to write, and let the cards fall where they may. Anywho, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. For more videos about self-publishing, blogging, freelance writing, or anything else I cover, hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the notification bell. I think that's going to do it for me today. I'm going to go find out what the hell's going on in my hallway. I'll see you next time.